This small transparent watercolor piece was great fun to work on. This is a 7 by 10 inch painting of a yellow-throated warbler. Now, I'm a bit biased, but I think all the warblers are pretty fantastic birds. And as a group, they're probably one of my favorite types of birds to paint. While I recently finished another painting of this exact same individual bird, this composition and its pose was completely different, so it seemed more than worthy of another painting. After transferring the drawing from my sketchbook using tracing paper and frisketing off the foreground, I prepared all of my background wash colors. I saturated my page with clean water until it was evenly soaked and then washed in the background sky with a 1-inch flat brush. I used a mix of ultramarine blue and dioxazine purple. Partway through, I realized my wash needed more purple, so I quickly mixed some on the fly. I should have tested that first on some scrap paper, but the wash ended up fine. Because the page was divided up by the frisket, this one really wanted to puddle. I wicked up the extra pigment so it didn't cause back runs as the page dried. Well, there are many ways to render clouds. On this one, we're looking almost straight up. So I was able to do the simplest cloud treatment, and that was make a blue wash and blot out the clouds using some balled up tissue. With the basics in place, I hit everything with the hairdryer and then scrubbed a few places where I wanted some extra wispy whites. Well, the background doesn't get much faster than that. With that done, I removed my frisket and transferred the foreground portions of the sketch with the leaves and the warbler using tracing paper and a folding bone. Now, my main goal was to cover the white of the page with all my lightest local colors. First, I hit the main stalk of the palm and the center rib of each leaf with a mix of mostly lemon yellow and a little phthalo green. Then I hit the edges of all the leaves with a mix of the same colors but with more phthalo green. I started introducing the darker leaf areas using the same greens but adding ultramarine blue and a bit more phthalo green. After the first pass, I started streaking in darker greens. And then I began bringing in some glazes of chrome orange and green to warm up sections of the leaves. I washed in some grays on the back of the bird using a mix of dioxazine purple, cadmium red medium, phthalo green, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm going to develop the colors and textures of the leaves in many glazed layers. Another pass was made with phthalo green, cadmium yellow medium, and cadmium red medium. I'm mostly streaking in the colors in long diagonal strokes, and as those overlap, it really starts to build the colors and the parallel grained texture of those leaves. Most of my darkest greens were mixes of phthalo green, cadmium red medium, and dioxazine purple, and the lightest areas on the leaves were lemon yellow and phthalo green. I introduced some brownish spots by glazing in layers of chrome orange and cadmium red medium with a touch of phthalo green. You can see my main photo reference. Well, it was very backlit and it had just a white sky, and I wanted to reinvent the lighting to have a mottled cloudy sky with blues and whites, but still to read as light in color. This meant I'd need to control the contrast of the leaves very carefully in order to make things look correct. It seemed like 75% of this painting was healthy green leaves, and 10% was leaf damage and bruises. And then 5% of it was sky, and then what was left, which wasn't much, was the bird. It's kind of funny, but I really enjoy painting leaf damage. Those elements tend to add a lot of interest, color, texture, and realism. When I painted healthy leaves, they tend to look a little boring in comparison. Sometimes the more beaten up and ratty the leaves get, the more interesting the painting becomes. My reference only had one leaf that was chewed up. I added a second one on the opposite side to balance out the composition. I really liked the little hole in the leafy pattern that was left, giving you an extra peek at that sky and altering the rhythm of the leaves. I love doing paintings with palm leaves. All those repeating patterns, they're really a blast to work with. And the way shadows fall over the leaves is great too. And all those little tapering leaves supply a lot of trajectory and create a lot of motion and energy in your compositions. If you watch the palette, in my case a butcher's tray, you're going to see just about how thick I'm glazing in my pigments. And it's actually amazing how many colors go into making a green leaf. There's oranges, reds, and purples. All those, in addition to your greens, help build convincing color and texture. Partway through, I retransferred part of my sketch because I lost some of the details of the foot while rendering my leaves. When rendering those bruised and damaged sections, I brought in some fairly intense cadmium red medium and permanent alizarin crimson in places. And those sparks of darker and more saturated colors should really help those tiny details pop. The leaves were in good enough shape that I now needed to turn my attention over to the warbler. The birds always go in quickly. The darks were made with mixes of phthalo green and cadmium red medium, alizarin crimson, dioxazine purple, and ultramarine blue. And I did switch to a 10-aught brush for some of the finer work on the bird. And I also will use a magnifier for some of the finest details. Later in the paintings, I felt things were a little flatter than I wanted, so I started ignoring my photo reference and I amped up the shadows on the top half of each leaf and planned on bringing in some more shading around the bird to give it a little better separation from the leaves. For this, I was using phthalo green and dioxazine purple mostly. For the bird's belly, I used a lot of those same leafy green colors as reflected light. For the yellows on the bird's chin, I started with lemon yellows and then added shading with chrome orange, cadmium red medium, some alizarin crimson, and in the darkest areas even some dioxazine purple. I try to keep the paper at least somewhat right side up when I'm doing these videos, but there are times where you're just better off flipping or rotating your paper so it's going to fit your hand in the natural brushstroke directions better. I'm almost always painting on hot press watercolor paper, and there are advantages and disadvantages to hot press paper. The main advantage is that it has a super smooth surface, and it is fantastic for putting in detail. The main disadvantage is that it just doesn't like to take washes as easily as cold pressed watercolor paper. The hot press paper can be downright fussy and seems to be more picky about humidity. It's also susceptible to unintentional backruns and blooms. Your technique needs to be a bit more meticulous on hot press paper, but it basically is the same process. If you're a beginning watercolor painter, I'd start with cold press papers. Large and even background washes, gradients, smooth blurry elements and effects like that. They're just much more predictable and way easier to do on cold press paper. Its bumpy surface may get in the way of creating a lot of fine detail, but it does take a wash perfectly. Late in the paintings, I'm generally just sharpening up small details using darks. I spend a lot more time looking for things to fix than I spend fixing them, and eventually I just run out of things that bother me and the painting's finished. So there you go. This is a 7x10 inch transparent watercolor of a yellow-throated warbler on a palm. Thanks so much for watching.